Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for Storytime. We're going to have another chapter from Diary of a Disciple and a devotion from Indescribable. So get yourself comfortable and then I will begin. Chapter 22. Supper, Sneaking and Swords. The Passover was not many days away. The what? Passover is a Jewish festival, so every Jew in Jerusalem would have been getting ready to celebrate it. They'd been celebrating Passover for hundreds and hundreds of years by having a special meal that reminded them of when their very ancient family was set free from Egypt. You can read all about it in the Bible if you have one. Have a look at Exodus chapter 12. By now, the chief priests and important temple people were so desperate to get rid of Jesus. They were worried he was going to start turning people against them, and then they'd have an even bigger problem to deal with. But then the devil got to Judas, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, and persuaded him to do something that would change everything. So Judas went to see the people who wanted to get rid of Jesus, and together they made a sneaky plan. Judas ended up with a nice pile of money for his trouble, and so he agreed to find a time and place when Jesus would be away from the crowd so that he could be captured. Passover arrived, and everyone started to get ready. The first thing they needed to do was sort out the lamb for the meal, so Jesus asked Peter and John to go and make a start. But they said, "Where are we going to eat? Where should we go and set everything up?" When you go into town, you'll see a man carrying a huge jar of water. Follow him, and when he gets to his house, tell the owner that your teacher wants to know where he can celebrate the Passover with his friends. Then he'll take you upstairs and show you a room where you can get everything ready. Sure enough, when Peter and John got into town, everything happened just like Jesus said it would, which is probably a good thing, otherwise Peter and John might have looked pretty strange. Later on, when it was time for the Passover meal, Jesus and his mates sat down to eat. But just before they started, Jesus said something. "I've been really looking forward to having this meal with you guys before everything starts to happen. I'm going to suffer soon, and I won't get to have a meal like this until we're all together with God." Jesus picked up a cup of wine from the table, thanked God for it, and said, "Pass this around, share it. I won't be having any more wine until God's kingdom is here." Then Jesus picked up some bread from the table and thanked God for that too. He tore the bread into pieces and gave it to the disciples and said, "This bread is my body. It is broken for you. Eat it as a way of remembering me." He picked another cup of wine, thanked God for it and said, "This wine is my blood. It is poured out for you. God is using it to make everything new." Then Jesus looked each of the disciples in the eye and said, "The person who is going to betray me is here, in this room. It's one of you. I will die just as I was meant to, but for the person who betrays me, it will be horrible." Everything went crazy. The disciples started fighting with each other, trying to find out who had ever betrayed Jesus. "I'd never do that. It's not me." "It is you. Is it you? What's he talking about? He can't suffer." The disciples carried on fighting and ended up arguing about who was the best. "Look," said Jesus, interrupting their argument, "don't be like kings who boss people around. Whichever one of you is the best should be the best at serving everyone else. People think it's the person who is being served that's the most important, but think about it. All the time I've been with you, I've been your servant. But because you've stood by me even when things have been hard, I want you to know that I will make you like kings, because God has made me king over everything. You'll be with me in my kingdom, and we'll eat and drink together." The disciples stopped arguing. This was all starting to sound pretty serious. "Simon Peter," Jesus said loudly, "listen to me. Every one of you will be tested when I'm gone. But Peter, I've asked God to keep your faith strong, and when you come back to me, help the others." "But Jesus, I'd do anything for you. I'd go to the jail for you. I'd even die for you." "Oh, Peter," said Jesus, "if only you knew. Before you hear the cries of a rooster tomorrow morning, you'll turn away from me 3 times. You'll say you don't know me." "Listen, all of you," said Jesus. When I sent you out and said, don't take any money or bags or shoes, was there anything that you needed? No, not at all, they replied. Now it's different. If you've got money, bring it with you. If you don't have a sword, buy one. If you've got a bag, fill it with all you can carry it with you. It was written about me a long time ago. People will think he's the criminal. That's going to be true soon. That's exactly what they'll think. The disciples rummaged around in their bags and managed to find 2 swords. Look, Jesus, we've got 2 swords. That's enough now, said Jesus as he began to walk away. Jesus was heading back to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him quietly. When they arrived, the disciples sat down, and Jesus said to them, Pray. Now, pray that you won't be tested. Then Jesus kept on walking and left the disciples behind. Suddenly he fell onto his knees. God, please don't make me do this. Please don't, but do what you want to do, not what I want. Jesus was in so much pain that an angel appeared and came to help him. Eventually, Jesus got up and went back to find the disciples. They were snoring their heads off, fast asleep. Why are you asleep? He said. Why were you not praying? Wake up now and pray that you won't be tested. Jesus was still trying to wake the disciples when a crowd of people appeared in the distance. They were getting closer pretty quickly, and as they did, it became clear that there was one man out in front. The disciples squinted at him. It looked like but it couldn't be, could it? It was Judas. Judas came strolling over and gave Jesus an enormous hug and planted a great big kiss on his cheek. But there was a strange look on his face. Judas, are you betraying the Messiah with a kiss? And then it dawned on the disciples. It had been Judas all along. Jesus was about to be arrested and taken away. They grabbed their swords and ran towards the crowd. Shall we attack them, Jesus? Shall we use our swords? No, stop. That's enough, said Jesus as people from the crowd grabbed hold of him. But it was too late for one of the crowd. Someone had swung their sword at him and cut his ear clean off. Ew! Jesus simply reached out and touched the man's head, and his ear was instantly healed. Jesus spoke to the crowd as they tried to lead him away. Why are you arresting me like this? Why did you bring all these swords and weapons to hurt me? Why are you treating me like a criminal? I was there every day in the temple. You could have taken me away whenever you wanted. Why now? Why like this? This is the time. Now the darkness is in control. They led Jesus away. Peter waited until the crowd had gone off ahead, and then he followed them all the way to the house of the high priest. Once Jesus had disappeared from view, Peter snuck inside. After a while, Peter noticed some people were lighting a fire in the courtyard, so he went over to join them and sat quietly trying to warm. The people round the fire kept looking at him. Peter buried his face in his cloak. He was with Jesus, one of them announced. I was not. I've never met him, mumbled Peter into his cloak. Later on, someone else said, Hey, you're the guy who's with Jesus, aren't you? You're one of those disciple people. No, I'm not, said Peter. Stop saying that I am. Then, about an hour later, someone else spoke up. Look at him. He's clearly from Galilee, and that's where that Jesus guy came from. Of course he knows him, don't you? Peter stood up and shouted, I don't know him. Leave me alone. And then just as Peter finished talking, he heard it. A rooster crying out loudly. Cock-a-doodle-oo, cock-a-doodle-oo, cock-a-doodle-oo. Peter turned and saw Jesus over the other side of the courtyard. Jesus was looking straight back at him. Peter couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand knowing what he'd just done. He turned and ran away as fast as he could, with tears streaming down his face. Meanwhile, the guards who were keeping an eye on Jesus started to bully him. They kicked and punched and called him names. They even put a blindfold on him, and then took turns hitting him in the face. Go on then, they jeered. Tell us who it was that hit you. After a pretty awful night, the morning came, and Jesus was dragged before all the important temple people. Tell us then, are you the Messiah? They sneered. If I said I was, you'd say I wasn't, replied Jesus. If I asked you a question, you'd ignore me. But you should know now that the Son of Man will take his place at the right hand of God in heaven. So are you the Son of Man then? Is that who you're claiming to be? It's who you say I am, said Jesus. That's settled then. We don't need any more witnesses, do we? He's just said it himself. What's going on here? Did you notice anything odd about what just happened to Jesus? Maybe you could think about it and write down some of your thoughts. So our devotion is called The Eyes Have It. Open my eyes to see the wonderful things in your teachings. That's Psalm 119 verse 18. Take a look around you for a second. What do you see? Lights and colours and movement and things both tiny and huge. Your eyes are an amazing gift from God, and He began making them when you were still in your mother's womb. When you were about 5 months of development, 1 million optic, that's a fancy word for something that has to do with your eye, nerve endings stretched out from your brain to meet and match up with another 1 million optic nerve endings that stretched out from your eye. All 2 million of them matched up perfectly. Can you imagine matching up 2 million different wires and getting them all exactly right? Yet that's exactly what God did when making our eyes. Even the most technologically advanced machine on the earth is nothing compared to the magnificence of your eyes. All that happened at 5 months of growth, but you still couldn't see a thing. Why? Because your eyeballs were covered with skin. But at about the 6th month, a miraculous and mysterious thing happened. The skin separated, giving your eyelids for the very first time, all while you were still in your mother's womb. The God who created all the wonders of this world created your eyes to see those wonders, so you could praise Him. And the God who shared His words in the Bible gave you eyes to read them so you could obey Him. This world will try to show you all sorts of terrible things that aren't from God and sinful things that don't make Him smile. Look away. Look at God and His wonders instead. Be amazed. Chameleons have some of the coolest eyes around, and I do mean around. A chameleon can see in total 360-degree circle, all the way around its body. That's because it doesn't have eyelids like humans do. Instead, it has a cone around each eye with a small opening for the pupil, and each eye can move separately from the other, excuse me, so it can look in 2 different directions at once. Lord God, thank you for the gift of my eyes. Open them to see all the gifts you have blessed me with, and help me thank you for every one. Thank you for joining me for another story time. Let's finish with a prayer. Dear God, we thank you for all the amazing things that we can see, because our eyes are created by you in such an amazing way. Help us to look at the world in a positive way. Help us to look at all the great things that you have given us. And help us, Lord, to look away from all the bad things and all the sin in the world, Lord. And help us to focus on you so that we can continually be blessed by you, knowing that you're in charge, Lord, and we thank you for that. Amen. So have a great couple of days. Join me again on Wednesday for another story time. A couple more chapters of Diary of a Disciple. That's all we've got to go. Have a great week. Have a great few days. Stay safe. Take care. And I will see you soon. Bye.